Steve Harvey had hosted Family Feud for over a decade. He had seen families celebrate, cry, argue, and hug on that famous stage more times than he could count. He thought he had witnessed every possible emotion a game show could produce. But nothing in his entire career, nothing in his entire life, could have prepared him for what was about to happen on that ordinary Wednesday afternoon in October 2024. The studio lights were bright, the audience was ready, and two families stood at their podiums waiting to play. What nobody knew, not even Steve himself, was that the next 20 minutes would change his life forever. This wasn't going to be just another episode of Family Feud. This was going to be the moment when a secret hidden for over 50 years would finally come to light on national television. If stories about family reunions and emotional surprises touch your heart, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel right now. Trust us, you won't want to miss what happens next in this incredible story. The Williams family from Chicago stood on one side of the stage. On the other side stood the Carter family from Detroit. Both families seemed excited and ready to compete, but there was something unusual about the Williams family. At the center of their lineup stood a 68-year-old man named Raymond Williams. He had kind eyes, a warm smile, and something about his face that seemed strangely familiar. The audience couldn't quite place it, but several people in the crowd kept looking at Raymond and then at Steve Harvey, noticing something they couldn't quite explain. Raymond Williams had lived a quiet life. He grew up in the south side of Chicago, raised by a single mother named Beatrice who worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. She cleaned houses during the day and worked at a laundromat at night. Raymond never knew his father. Whenever he asked about him, his mother would get a sad look in her eyes and change the subject. All she ever told him was that his father was a good man who had circumstances that kept him away. She said his father didn't even know Raymond existed. This was a secret she kept her entire life. What Raymond didn't know, what he had never been told, was that his mother Beatrice had a brief relationship with a man named Jesse Harvey back in 1955. Jesse Harvey was a coal miner from West Virginia who had come to Chicago looking for better opportunities. He and Beatrice fell in love during a summer that changed both their lives, but circumstances pulled them apart. Jesse had to return to West Virginia to care for his sick mother, and by the time Beatrice discovered she was pregnant, Jesse was already gone. She had no way to contact him. There were no cell phones back then, no social media, no easy way to find someone who had moved across state lines. Beatrice raised Raymond on her own and never told anyone about Jesse Harvey. Jesse Harvey went on to marry another woman and have several children, including a son named Broderick Stephen Harvey, born in 1957. That son would grow up to become one of the most famous entertainers in America. Steve Harvey. Raymond Williams and Steve Harvey were half-brothers, sharing the same father, and neither of them had any idea the other existed. For 67 years, this secret remained buried. Beatrice Williams passed away in 2019, taking the secret with her to the grave. Or so she thought. 3 years ago, Raymond's daughter Keisha decided to take a DNA ancestry test as a birthday gift to herself. She was curious about her roots and wanted to learn more about where her family came from. When the results came back, she got the shock of her life. The test showed a close genetic match with someone in the database, a half-uncle. Further research revealed that this genetic connection led directly to the Harvey family. Keisha spent months quietly investigating, gathering evidence, and piecing together the story. She found old photos, tracked down records, and eventually confirmed what seemed impossible. Her father Raymond was the half-brother of Steve Harvey. Keisha didn't know how to tell her father. She didn't know how to approach Steve Harvey's family. She worried that no one would believe her, that people would think she was just looking for money or fame. So she came up with a plan. She applied for her family to be on Family Feud. She thought that maybe, just maybe, if they could get on the show, she could find a way to reveal the truth in a setting where everyone could witness it together. It took over a year of applications and callbacks, but finally, the Williams family was selected to compete. They were going to be on Family Feud. They were going to meet Steve Harvey, and Keisha was going to finally tell the truth. The taping day arrived. Raymond still didn't know the real reason his family had pushed so hard to get on this show. He thought it was just for fun, a chance to win some money and be on television. He had no idea that his entire understanding of his own identity was about to change. Steve approached the families with his signature energy and charm. He asked them questions, made jokes, and got the crowd laughing. When he got to Raymond, something made him pause. Steve looked at the older man for a long moment. There was something familiar about Raymond's face, something in his eyes, something in the shape of his jaw. Steve shook his head slightly, as if dismissing a strange thought, and continued with the show. The game went on. The Williams family played well, winning the first 2 rounds. Raymond was having the time of his life. He laughed at Steve's jokes, gave enthusiastic answers, and hugged his family members after each victory. But Keisha was nervous. Her hands were shaking. She kept looking at her father and then at Steve, seeing the resemblance that she now understood so clearly, the same forehead, the same way they tilted their heads when thinking, the same warm, genuine smile that could light up a room. The Williams family won the main game and made it to fast money. They were excited and celebrating. But then, before the fast money round could begin, Keisha stepped forward. She had arranged this with the producers ahead of time. They knew something special was planned, though even they didn't know exactly what was about to be revealed. The producers had agreed to give the family a few minutes during a scheduled break in taping. Steve looked curious but relaxed. He was used to families getting emotional or wanting to say something special. He figured this was just another heartfelt moment in a show full of them. Keisha took a deep breath and looked at Steve. Her voice was shaking when she spoke. "Mr. Harvey, I need to tell you something. I need to tell everyone something. This isn't just a game show appearance for us. We came here for a very specific reason." Steve's expression shifted from playful to serious. He could tell this was something important. "Go ahead, sweetheart," he said gently. "What's on your mind?" Keisha turned to her father, Raymond, who looked confused. Then she turned back to Steve. "Mr. Harvey, 3 years ago I took a DNA test. What I found changed everything I thought I knew about my family, about my father, about you." The studio fell completely silent. Even the audience, who had been buzzing with energy moments before, went quiet. They could sense that something profound was happening. Steve Harvey stood perfectly still, his famous smile replaced by an expression of intense attention. "Do you mean about me?" he asked. Keisha reached into her pocket and pulled out a folder. Inside were the DNA results, the research she had gathered, the old photographs she had found. "Mr. Harvey, your father Jesse Harvey had a relationship with a woman named Beatrice Williams in Chicago back in 1955. That woman was my grandmother. She got pregnant, but your father had already left for West Virginia. She never told him. She never told anyone." Steve's face went pale. He took a step backward, steadying himself on the podium. "What are you saying?" he whispered. Keisha continued, her own tears starting to fall. "I'm saying that my father, Raymond Williams, is your half-brother. You share the same father. Jesse Harvey was his father, too. My dad has lived his whole life not knowing who his father was, and you've lived your whole life not knowing you had another brother." She handed Steve the folder. "It's all here. The DNA matches, the dates, everything. I'm not making this up. I'm not looking for anything except the truth." Steve Harvey opened the folder with trembling hands. He looked at the DNA results. He looked at the old photographs of Beatrice Williams. He looked at a picture of his own father, Jesse Harvey, as a young man. Then he looked up at Raymond Williams, really looked at him, and suddenly he saw what the audience had been sensing all along. The resemblance was undeniable. The same eyes, the same expressions, the same way of standing. Steve's eyes filled with tears. "I can't believe it," he said, his voice breaking. "I can't believe it." He said it again, louder this time. "I can't believe it." Raymond still looked confused. He turned to his daughter. "Keisha, what's happening? What are you talking about?" Keisha took her father's hands in hers. "Daddy, Steve Harvey is your brother. You have the same father. Grandma never told you, but I found the proof. Jesse Harvey, the man Steve talks about in his books and interviews, he was your father too." Raymond's knees buckled. His son Marcus caught him and helped him stay standing. For a moment, the 68-year-old man who had spent his entire life wondering about his father, who had grown up feeling like a piece of himself, was missing, couldn't speak. He just stared at Steve Harvey with tears streaming down his face. Steve crossed the stage in 3 quick steps. He wrapped his arms around Raymond and pulled him into a tight hug. The 2 men, brothers who had never known each other, stood there holding each other while the entire studio wept. "My brother," Steve kept saying. "You're my brother. All this time I had a brother I didn't even know about." Raymond couldn't speak. He just held on to Steve like he was afraid this moment might disappear if he let go. 67 years of not knowing, 67 years of wondering, 67 years of that empty space where a father should have been, and suddenly Raymond had not just answers but a whole new family. The audience was on their feet, many of them crying openly. The producers, the camera operators, even the stagehands, everyone in that studio was moved by what they were witnessing. This wasn't scripted television. This wasn't manufactured drama. This was real life unfolding in the most unexpected way possible. Steve finally pulled back from the hug but kept his hands on Raymond's shoulders. "Man, you look just like him," Steve said, his voice thick with emotion. "You look just like our daddy. I can see him in your face." Raymond laughed through his tears. "I never knew what he looked like. Mama never had any pictures." Steve wiped his eyes and turned to the cameras. For a moment, the professional entertainer disappeared, and there was just a man experiencing one of the most profound moments of his life. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice still shaking, "in all my years of television, in all my years of life, nothing has ever hit me like this. I just found out I have a brother I never knew about. My father, Jesse Harvey, the man who shaped everything I am, he had another son, and that son is standing right here next to me." He put his arm around Raymond. "Family isn't just who you grow up with. Family is blood. Family is connection. And sometimes, family surprises you in ways you never expected." The taping was paused for over an hour as the two families got to know each other backstage. Steve introduced Raymond to his own siblings, who had rushed to the studio when they heard what was happening. The Harvey family and the Williams family sat together, looking at old photos, sharing stories, and discovering all the ways their lives had run parallel without ever crossing paths. Raymond learned that his father Jesse had passed away years ago, but he also learned that Jesse had been a good man, a hard worker, and a devoted father to the children he did know about. Raymond cried hearing stories about the father he never got to meet. When the taping resumed, the Williams family played fast money in what Steve called the most emotional round in the show's history. They won the $20,000 prize, but by that point, the money felt almost insignificant compared to what had already been gained. Raymond had found his family. Steve had found a brother. Two bloodlines that had been separated for nearly 7 decades were finally reunited. The episode aired 2 months later and became one of the most watched episodes in Family Feud history. Clips of the reunion went viral within hours. News outlets around the world picked up the story. The hashtag Brothers Reunited trended for 3 days straight. The response from the public was overwhelming. People shared their own stories of family reunions, of DNA tests revealing unexpected connections, of secrets finally coming to light after decades of silence. Ancestry testing companies reported a surge in new customers, all hoping that they too might discover family members they never knew they had. What had started as a game show appearance had become a cultural moment about family, identity, and the power of truth. Steve Harvey gave numerous interviews about the experience. He talked about how it had changed his perspective on everything. He said he used to think he knew his family history completely, but this showed him that there's always more to discover. He talked about his father, Jesse Harvey, with new understanding. Jesse had been a young man in the 1950s, living in a time when communication was difficult and circumstances could separate people permanently. Jesse never knew he had left behind a son in Chicago. He never knew that Beatrice Williams was pregnant when he returned to West Virginia. It wasn't abandonment, it was simply the way life worked before the modern era of instant connection. Steve said he wished his father could have known Raymond. He wished the two men could have met. But he also said that somehow he felt like his father had arranged this reunion from beyond, like Jesse had been waiting all these years for his two sons to finally find each other. Raymond Williams became a regular guest at Harvey family gatherings. He met Steve's wife Marjorie, his stepchildren, his grandchildren. He was welcomed into a family he never knew he had with open arms and genuine love. For a man who had spent his entire life feeling like something was missing, suddenly everything felt complete. He often said that Keisha's decision to take that DNA test was the best thing that ever happened to their family. It gave them not just answers, but a whole new branch of relatives who treated them like they had always belonged. 6 months after the episode aired, the Harvey and Williams families held a joint family reunion in West Virginia, in the same town where Jesse Harvey had grown up. Over 150 family members attended, representing both bloodlines that had come from the same man. They visited Jesse's grave together, Raymond seeing his father's resting place for the first time. Steve and Raymond stood side by side, two brothers who had lived separate lives for nearly 7 decades, finally united at the grave of the father they shared. Raymond placed flowers on the grave and spoke to a father he never knew. He thanked Jesse for giving him life, for the good genes that had made him strong and healthy, and for somehow, some way, bringing him to his brother. Steve gave a speech at the reunion that was later shared millions of times on social media. He talked about the importance of family, the power of connection, and the miracle of discovering that your family is bigger than you ever imagined. He said that his father Jesse had taught him everything about hard work, about faith, about treating people right. And now, through Raymond, Jesse's legacy was even larger than Steve had known. He said the Harvey family and the Williams family were one family now, connected by blood and joined by love. The story inspired a documentary that was released the following year. It traced both family lines back through history, explored the brief love story between Jesse Harvey and Beatrice Williams, and documented the modern-day reunion that had captivated millions. The documentary won several awards and was praised for its honest, emotional portrayal of what it means to discover family later in life. Raymond and Steve were both interviewed extensively, sharing their thoughts and feelings about the journey they had been on since that incredible day in the Family Feud studio. Keisha, the woman whose DNA test had started it all, became an advocate for people searching for their biological families. She spoke at conferences and community events about the power of genetic testing and the importance of being prepared for whatever you might discover. She always said that the truth, even difficult truth, was better than a lifetime of questions. She encouraged people who were curious about their family history to take the leap, to get tested, to search for answers. She said you never know what family might be waiting for you on the other side of that discovery. 2 years after their reunion, Raymond and Steve wrote a book together about their experience. It was called Brothers, A Story of Family Found, and it became a bestseller. The book explored their individual journeys, the moment of discovery on Family Feud, and the relationship they had built since then. They donated a portion of the proceeds to organizations that help people search for biological family members. They wanted to give others the same gift that they had received, the gift of connection, of belonging, of knowing where you come from. Steve continued to host Family Feud, but he often said that no episode would ever match the one where he found his brother. He kept a photo of himself and Raymond on his desk in his office, right next to photos of his other siblings and his children. Whenever he looked at it, he was reminded that life can surprise you at any moment, that family can appear when you least expect it, and that sometimes the most amazing things happen when you're just trying to play a simple game show. Raymond Williams lived the rest of his years surrounded by more family than he ever dreamed possible. The man who grew up not knowing his father's name was now part of one of the most famous families in entertainment. But the fame didn't matter to him. What mattered was the connection. What mattered was knowing. What mattered was no longer having that empty space in his heart where a father and brother should have been. That space was finally filled. Raymond often said that he wished his mother Beatrice could have seen this. He wished she could have known that keeping her secret didn't hurt him. It just delayed the reunion. The truth found a way, just like it always does. The story of Steve Harvey and Raymond Williams remains one of the most incredible moments in television history. It proved that game shows can be more than entertainment. They can be platforms for life-changing revelations. They can bring people together in ways nobody anticipated. And sometimes, in the most unexpected circumstances, they can introduce you to the brother you never knew you had. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with your family and friends because stories like this remind us that blood is thicker than time, distance, or secrets. No matter how long the separation, family has a way of finding each other. And you never know when your own life might be changed by a truth you never saw coming. Thank you for watching, and remember, the people you're looking for might be closer than you think.